Why this position? Why now?
Well, I did this job, and so I know this job, I think, especially well. And I love public service. The city is in trouble. Mike Bloomberg is a substantial mayor who needs oversight and watching. I was very much against what he did on term limits. So to help the city out of this economic crisis to the extent the public advocate can, and to be a counterweight to a major mayor, I thought I'd offer myself back to the voters, so I am the former and maybe future public advocate.
You were a very aggressive foil to some of Mayor Giuliani's policies, particularly in the area of racial profiling, police misconduct, and the like. What policies of Mayor Bloomberg, if you were to be in office at the same time going forward, or policies of City Controller Bill Thompson, what policies do you take issue with that you think they need a counterweight?
Well, let me just step back for a second, Ken. You know the job extremely well because you served with me when I was there. One part of it is nothing to do with who the mayor is, in a sense. It's answering complaints from city taxpayers about city services. And boy, with the economy in the toilet, it's even more urgent that we have a public advocate who's very sensitive to individual concerns, seniors, children, municipal hospitals, people in need. Second is investigating city services, almost irrespective of who the mayor is, because he can't know everything in every agency. So if water bills are sprouting around the city because of a computer malfunction, which happened when I was public advocate, you blow the whistle. But last are the policies of a particular mayor. And as much as I don't always agree with Mike Bloomberg, but he's not Rudy Giuliani. His temperament is much more mellow and welcoming. So I think I would often work well with him when I agree with him on, for example, a lot of his health and environmental issues. But when he tried to jam the Jet Stadium into one of the most congested places in the country on the west side of Manhattan, which failed and now has left a underutilized Hudson Yards, I'll speak up. When he tried to overturn 2 voter referenda for 8-year term limits, you can have a debate whether it should be 8 or 12 years or not at all. But it was so grossly undemocratic and unfair that I spoke up about the first public person to condemn it the day he said, well, maybe I would. Some of his economic policies are not mine. He's a very skilled big business advocate. I am a consumer advocate for many decades. And so when he says, oh, I don't like more of the progressive income tax because people will leave the city because an income tax goes up 1%, given all the costs that people have to bear. Instead, he wants an increase in the sales tax, assuming, I guess, that poor people can't leave the city, which might be true. That's regressive and unfair, and I would speak out against it.
So do you take it as a foregone conclusion that he will be the mayor when you're the public advocate?
Not. I will be supporting ardently the Democratic nominee, whoever in this instance he is, always have. Mayor Bloomberg is a favorite for reasons I don't even have to belabor. I'm one of the 2 people on the planet with Freddie Ferrer who knows what it's like to run against that mountain of money and his managerial skills. So he's favored, but President Hillary Clinton, in other words, there's no such thing as a lock. And he could be 1 or 2 events or a stumble or 2 away from absolutely losing, which has happened in the past.
You talked a little bit about the city being in trouble. Elaborate on that, because obviously the economic recession has affected many New Yorkers. Subprime crisis, pockets of it in the boroughs, but not as widespread in other parts of the city. Wall Street, the impact on the city overall, but particularly the unemployment that has been generated by it. Give us your overall assessment of where the city is right now and where you think it'll be over the next year.
The city's in almost unique trouble. The issue isn't whether we'll lose the nearly 300,000 jobs that were lost in the first few years of the 1990s. Regrettably, that's going to happen. Might we approach the more catastrophic 600,000 jobs lost in the 1970s? And we're on our way. This city will always have a Wall Street, but with electronic trading and us competing with London and Mumbai, we will never again see 5% of unemployment and 25 to 30% of revenues coming just from the FIRE sector, the finance, insurance, and real estate. Second point, I want to do everything I can with the pulpit of public advocate to increase real income of poor people and middle-class people. Uniquely, under Reagan and the Bushes and then Pataki, real income sank in this country in the last 30 years. Never, especially of working men. Women bumped up a little because they came into the workforce with pay equity. And so I've always been for living wage laws, for example, and I want to figure out how to encourage the new generation of jobs, technology, green jobs, continuing with health and professional service and financial services, which is a bedrock of our city. And so while other people may be focusing on big companies staying, I understand the anxieties of Citigroup and AIG. I want to figure out, I've been a small businessman now, Ken. I mean, you know me and a lot of your audience knows me. For 11 years, I was the consumer commissioner and then the public advocate, so I ran 2 citywide agencies. But for the last 2 years, I've been president of Air America Radio, now Air America Media. Took it out of Chapter 11, put it back on its feet, understood how if expenses keep exceeding revenues, you're in trouble. A press release doesn't get you by it. So I will be working especially hard on new jobs in new sectors and incubating green and technology jobs, like is happening in Greenpoint with small manufacturing, to make the city more welcoming to the next generation of workers.
You have a lot of expertise from your years as a consumer advocate, as the Consumer Affairs Commissioner, and some of your work as a public advocate on the regulation of markets and the integrity of financial systems. Do you have a take on what's happening nationally, and if you could translate that into what it means for New York, because to the extent that the public is hostile to Wall Street these days, that is New York's hometown industry. And as a political leader, how do you strike the right kind of balance on that?
Well, you do have to strike a balance. For years, we've heard this free market theology of laissez-faire, leave business alone, trust them. Laissez turned out not to be fair. It's collapsed with the banking scandals, the subprime scandals, and the evidence was there a decade ago on why we should continue to regulate and enforce transparency on banks and financial institutions. And then Republicans came along and allowed companies to be more secretive, attacked regulation, attacked the Securities and Exchange Commission. Mayor Bloomberg had a major piece, actually, in the Wall Street Journal about how we have to reduce what's called the Sarbanes-Oxley law out of Washington, which itself was a reaction to corporate corruption. And that's failed. Now we have to have much more, if you have ownership equity in Chrysler and General Motors and Citigroup and AIG, you may theoretically object to government involvement and regulation. The socialist was George W. Bush, who started us down this road. So I want smart regulation where they disclose what they're doing. And with the internet and social networking, we can now in real time see immediately what companies are doing. But Wall Street provides jobs and revenues, big time. And no candidate or official should be an enemy of that. But they have to work with them because they failed at what they were doing before because their heads were in the sand.
You have also been a critic of bureaucracy in many different forms, whether it's a big corporate bureaucracy or a government bureaucracy that's unresponsive. Now, with the government playing such a large role in the economy, isn't there the potential for things becoming even worse?
Well, the answer to your question, because I listened carefully, is there a potential for things? Yes, there's a potential.
So what do we do about that?
But what we know is that they're awful now, and we have the worst economic decline since the Great Depression. I think we'll avoid the Black Tuesday of 29, but even that's a question. So you have to put your fingers in the dike right now, and President Obama is doing that. With his proposals for a stimulus and for helping those who have been foreclosed on, or the 9 million who might be foreclosed on. We may not be as bad as Las Vegas, but that's faint praise. Yes, there's a risk, but as John Maynard Keynes and even Republicans now understand, if consumers aren't spending money and businesses are scared and not lending or spending money, if the government doesn't spend our money to get the economy going again, we will have a depression.